let's go ahead and let's jump right in and make our pineapple paradise vanilla extract.
Okay, well, this one is really nice because it can be finished in 2 months. You know, we have so many of our straight vanilla extracts and then other things that we add. We've got nuts and cocoa and all kinds of things we add, but sometimes it takes up to 12 months, even 18 months if you're adding bourbon in there. So this is one of our favorites because it can be done pretty quickly and you can enjoy it. And the great thing about this is if you're not wanting to cook and it's hot and during the summertime, you can add this to your cocktails, lemonades, sorbets, ice creams, all kinds of things like that if you're not in the baking mood because it's so hot outside.
Absolutely. And that's what's fun. We're trying over the summer. We're doing a lot of fruits and things like that because they have uses outside of things that are just traditional baking. So you don't have to turn the oven on. Those kinds of uses.
Yep. So let's get started. This is on, if you've got the book and you're following along, it's page 131. What we're going to start out with, we always start out with the vanilla beans. And this recipe calls for 1 ounce of our Hawaiian vanilla beans. And I'm not even sure if you can see this. I'm going to put it up really, really close. If you can see those sparkly white, almost like glitter, that's vanillin. That's what you're wanting to extract out of the pods and the oil. If you see that, this is like a very, very rich, wonderful bean full of oils. You're going to get a great extract. So if you ever see that, I hope that you can, I'm going to get it a little bit closer.
We've had people
almost like glitter, and some people might think it's mold. A couple of people are like, hey, I've got this stuff, but this is the good stuff.
So sometimes that vanillin oil will crystallize and then it forms almost, it looks like a spider web. And that's when it even more so starts looking like mold. And people will say, boy, this almost looks fuzzy, but it's not. It's actually the crystals, and they crystallize and they form into these webs, and it almost looks like a frost. And so when you see that or get that, it's your lucky day like that. That's a beautiful vanilla bean. Now, when we vacuum seal ours for freshness, sometimes the pressure of the vacuum seal will kind of spread them out, and so you may not see it as much in a vacuum seal bean. But if you did like these, we opened them, we left them out, and we can see these crystals forming again. It's really fun when you get them. And so these Hawaiian vanilla beans are special.
They are.
And they come from a great farm and a farmer that is just an amazing guy. We've pollinated orchids with him and his little daughters, right?
Yeah, his daughters.
And they're just an amazing family, and so they provide amazing vanilla beans for us. And this perfect example.
Yep.
Fun to see.
Okay, so the important part, and if you're an avid extractor, you know this already, but if you're new, you always want to weigh your beans. You want to get a consistency every time because, beans come in different sizes. Some are small, some are large. And so you want to have the same amount of bean every time into your extract. So our recipe is 1 ounce of beans. So I'm going to measure that here. Make sure that I've got 1 ounce of beans before I start adding it into the jar. I'm good to go here. And any kind of scale that you have, a kitchen scale that you have in your kitchen will be fine. I like this one because it's small, it fits in everything. We have one of these on our website, but I love this small one because I can just put it anywhere, and I can travel with it too if I want to.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about with bean weight that I think is really important, again, goes with vacuum sealing. We talked about how we put all of our beans in a vacuum seal pouch, and then there's pressure that's applied, and sometimes that oil comes out, and then all of you sort of experienced extract makers, you'll take sugar and you'll fill it in the pouch, and you'll let the sugar absorb all those oils that were left in there, and you get like this really delicious vanilla sugar. But the thing to remember too is that the weight from the beans, part of the weight from the beans is the oil that's left in the pouch. So the way that we fill our vanilla beans is we weigh the beans first, then we put them in the pouch, then we vacuum seal. So the weight that we have includes all the oils. So when you take them out of that vacuum seal pouch, you might leave some of the oils on the inside, and that's okay. But the weight might be a little bit different because of that. We actually overfill and measure to above weight every time to try to mitigate that. But on the really oily beans, sometimes a lot of weight is left in, and you use it for the vanilla sugar. So we remind everyone that though we round up and we say you need 1 ounce of beans for every 8 ounces of alcohol, that's a high estimate. The actual amount is 0.83 ounces of beans to every 8 ounces of alcohol. That's the FDA number. So if you're off by just a little bit, you're just fine. If it's like 0.98 or something like that of an ounce, it's likely because a little bit of oils were still left in the bag, and you're still well over that 0.83 mark that you need for accurate extract making per the FDA standards.
There's always a little wiggle room for some things that aren't exactly right. And then also, who doesn't want a little more vanilla?
Who doesn't want a little more vanilla?
Okay, so what I'm going to do here with the vanilla is I'm going to tie some of these because I want to keep the seeds that are inside the vanilla bean to save for later. People will ask, well, if you're going to use these beans, do you cut them open and save the caviar? We like to call it caviar because it looks kind of like caviar, but it's the vanilla seeds. What do you do with that? And it's like the best place to store that is in your extract. So tie them, or you can just, kind of fold them like this and put them at the bottom of the jar. But if you're not cutting them open, you can get them out later, cut them open, and add them into whatever you're making at the time. You're making some custards, you're making ice cream, just adding it to whipped cream. It's the best place to store your caviar.
Yep. And these are there's a lot of things that we talk about in every single show. So those of you that have been with us from the very beginning, I think this is like our 100th something show. You've seen us do this 100 times, but it's important for the new people that are joining us to talk about knotting, to talk about cutting them open, to talk about caviar, to talk about making sure that they're submerged. This is something we will talk about in every single show that we do forever and ever and always, because it's the basic principle that's really important for extract making, right?
Well, it's the very basic, and it's the question that gets asked almost most often. And so if you're a beginner, you're wondering this. And so if you're an expert, we love that you're just hanging around and listening to us.
And we appreciate that in our group, you're always willing to give the answers that you've given 100 times.
Yes, because we were all newbies, beginners at something at one point, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so what you can do, you can slice it down the middle. If you want that caviar in, and I like to have those specks in my vanilla. I love adding vanilla to something and seeing those specks. I think it just tastes more like vanilla, even though I'm not sure it does, but it makes me feel like it does. And then I'm just going to cut it into threes. If the beans are really long, I sometimes will do fours. Yeah, these are all
These are pretty good sized beans.
They are.
When you're like 5 beans to an ounce, that's a big bean.
That's right. So I'm just going to keep these 3 whole so I can save that caviar to use later. And then all of this, all that caviar is going to end up in my extract. So we're just going to put this at the bottom because you want to make sure that all of your vanilla is submerged by the alcohol. So you want to make sure that, you push these down, make sure they're going to be submerged. Okay, so now the next ingredient.
Well, I think we need to show them that jar too, because that's a pretty amazing jar.
This jar, we got this jar on our trip to Galena. One of our good extracting friends gave us this jar. It's a commemorative jar for how many years is it for ball?
140 years for ball canning. I think it's, 1884. It's 2024. So they made this commemorative jar to celebrate 100. And if I'm doing the math right, I think it's 140 years.
Yeah. Wow. Who knew they were around that long? I love this jar. Thank you so much for gifting it to us. We're just going to keep using it over and over and over.
Exactly. So thank you. So anyway, we needed to call that out. Thanks for the jar. This is a gift jar.
Okay, so the next ingredient is 1 ounce of freeze-dried pineapple. I've already pre-measured this. Oftentimes when this comes to you, it'll be all stuck together because there is a natural sugar in here. You'll have to break it up. If the pieces sometimes come bigger, you're going to need to kind of crush them up with your fingers. And then sometimes you'll get it and they'll get a little smushed in the mail and you'll have some kind of like powder at the bottom. That's good. Don't waste that. That's just, measure it out, weigh it, and then put it in the jar. It's going to fit even better, right? Yep. And so don't waste any of that comes to you. Even the crumbs at the bottom, you can use those.
There's still pineapple.
Yeah.
A couple of points, if I could, on this. When you look at our book, this is a question that came up in our group just this week, where it says it says 1 ounce of freeze-dried pineapple, and then it says times 2. And someone said, well, what is the times 2? Because a lot of people don't know. And some people thought it meant like a double fold or a triple fold. It kind of does, but it doesn't. What it actually means is that's the number of times that we're going to do change outs. So if it says 1 ounce of pineapple times 2, that means we're going to need 1 ounce of pineapple once and then 1 ounce of pineapple again when we do the change out. And everyone says, well, why don't you just put all 2 ounces in right away? And the answer to that question is alcohol. Yeah, there's not enough space. These will go in there. The pineapple's really thirsty. It's going to absorb some. We're going to have to top it out. So that's the reason we do it over 2 different, sometimes 3 different, and sometimes even more change outs, because we only have enough alcohol to submerge 1 ounce at a time.
Yes.
And so that's the reason that you'll see the times 2 or the times 3 throughout our cookbook. It's to let you know that you're going to need 1 ounces now, and then 1 ounce in a month or 2.
1 month. Yeah. So
and
we're
another
gonna
ounce. Yep.
we're gonna put all this together.
Yep.
And then in 1 month, you'll pull out just the pineapple. You'll leave the vanilla in there. And then you'll put another fresh ounce in.
Yep.
These are very thirsty. And so they are going to absorb a ton of the alcohol. So we'll put a little fermentation weight on the top to just kind of help keep them down. You'll want to check on them ever so often, but you may need to top off with a little bit of rum, because how much it absorbs.
Yep. And we'll measure that when we do the first change out, and we'll actually press it out, and we'll try to get all the alcohol out of the pineapple before we discard it. And whatever we're short, we're going to top it off if we need to top it off. The other question that comes up is, last time in our last show, we did strawberry extract and we used fresh strawberries. This time we're using freeze-dried. And so why do we go back and forth between both? And the reason that we did that in our book was to show both ways. In every single fruit extract that we make, you can follow this method, and you can use freeze-dried, dried to make it with rum and vodka. Or if we had fresh pineapple here and you wanted to get all those pineapple juices, one, it's a lot less expensive, a whole lot less expensive. But like we talked about in the last show, you got to up your alcohol content. So you need to begin with like an Everclear, and you can use fresh instead of freeze-dried. We actually just had a comment on YouTube this morning. I'm not sure if that person's here today, but they said, hey, when I'm done with my fresh strawberries, if I wanted to add dried strawberries, can I do that? And the answer is to add more, strawberry flavor. And the answer is, of course you can.
Yep.
And the nice thing about adding dry is you're not diluting it anymore. So the alcohol content stays the same. And all you're doing is adding more and more concentration. So like we talked about, fresh is never as concentrated as dried. But for those of us that are trying to make extracts on a budget, we're trying to use the fresh stuff that's around us, and we like the taste of those natural fruit juices. Using fresh pineapple would work following that method, just like it works here. So throughout our book, we I think kind of went almost 50-50 as best we could, where we use fresh for some, dried for others, so we could show you how, but both could be used whenever you're making fruit extract.
Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to add the 1 ounce of pineapple, dried pineapple. I also want to mention that you can use dehydrated. A lot of people will dehydrate their own fruit, and then you can also buy dehydrated in the store. The only thing is there is a little bit of moisture in the dehydrated fruit. And so, the sweet spot of alcohol that you're using is between 35 and 50%. I would say if you're going to try the dehydrated to go a little bit up from that 35. There's vodkas and rums that are around the 45%. That might be a little bit better, because you don't quite know how much moisture is in the dehydrated fruit, but you can use it.
You can use it. And sometimes where dehydrated uses heat, sometimes it could alter the taste of the fruit just a little bit. That's another con with dehydrated. So we've kind of avoided it because there's just more variability with dehydration. Freeze-dried, it doesn't use heat. The moisture is completely removed. And so we kind of go back and forth between freeze-dried and fresh. But dehydrated is an option. There's just more variables. The heat, how much moisture, like you said. This just sort of isolates variables for us a little bit more.
But still an option.
For sure.
Okay, so the last thing, you guys, how easy is this? Is the rum. Now, in the book, it says Hawaiian rum, and there's the thing in Utah. We're kind of a dry state here, so a lot of times when we go in and we try to find certain spirits that we tried before, they're not there.
Yeah, when we wrote the book, we used a Hawaiian rum, and it's lovely. And just trying to keep everything, it's like we've got a pineapple from Hawaii. We're using vanilla beans from Hawaii. Wouldn't it be great to use a spirit from Hawaii? There's Hawaiian vodkas, and there's also Hawaiian rums. Not a single one of them is currently found in the state of Utah, even though there were many when
Well, I think there were some, but they were a little further away.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so we just couldn't get them. So, but it's a good lesson. People say, does it have to be Hawaiian rum? No, it doesn't. It can be, like this is a great rum, the Bacardis, there's a lot of them out there in our book. There's lots of recommendations. It's just fun when you can kind of make these themed extracts that are all Hawaiian, and that's the reason that that's in the book, because it's fun to do. But here we are rolling with it because it was available then, and it's not available today. So we're going to use our Bacardi today. Is that right?
It's Bacardi.
Yes.
Yep. It's a white rum, so it's sugarcane based, so it's going to be a little sweeter than if you just use vodka. But if you have vodka and you don't have any rum, you want to try that, it'll work.
And there's lots of Hawaiian vodkas that have popped up in the last couple of years too. The Ocean vodka, the Poi vodka, if I'm pronouncing it right, something like that. Maui, anyway, something like that. So there's a few sugar-based vodkas now that have come out of Hawaii that are fun. But that's the reason that we call for it in the book. It's fun to kind of stick with the theme.
Yep.
But we're going to roll with it.
We're going to roll with it. We're going to roll with what we got here.
We're going to roll with what we got. We're going to use sugarcane rum from Puerto Rico, I think, is where this comes from.
Yep. It's going to be a little bit sweeter. So it's 8 ounces of white rum to 1 ounce of beans and 1 ounce of dried fruit. So we're just going to add this in here. And a lot of times I will just kind of, I've got a cocktail muddle here, and sometimes I just kind of push it down, get it all down there.
The pineapple wants to all float to the top at first.
It does. And once it'll absorb all of the liquid. If you don't have a fermentation weight like this, these are really quite nice when you're extracting with fruits, because you can just drop it in the top and kind of push most of it down. I would check on this ever so often in the cupboard just to see that it's down and submerged. If it's not, take out your weight and then go ahead and push it down with a spoon if you don't have a cocktail muddle. I really love to just look in my cupboards and see whatever works, and use that. So whatever you have, it'll be great.
It'll be great. And like you said, we keep pushing it down because it'll be like a sponge. And so even when it's in there, if you're a weekend and you see that, the alcohol's been absorbed by the pineapple, feel free to grab the muddle and just push it down, and it's like pushing down on a sponge and getting that alcohol out.
Yeah.
So it fills it back up. If you need to top it off a little bit, you're going to be just fine. And the reason is in a month, we're adding another 1 ounce of pineapple, and then we're done. And so we're going to go through 2 rounds of this. It's going to be a very highly concentrated pineapple, and that vanilla is going to be hiding in the background. It softens it a little bit. It softens that acidity of the pineapple. But it's ready in 2 months, even with a full ounce of vanilla beans in there.
Yeah. And if you wanted it to be a little bit more pronounced with vanilla, you could wait longer for that vanilla to extract.
Yep. Just make sure that when you take out the second one, which we'll do, you may have to top it off a little bit to get your 8 ounces.
Yes.
You've still got 1 ounce of Hawaiian vanilla beans in there. So if you want to leave it for 6 months, 12 months, you're welcome to leave it. It's only going to get creamier with the vanilla. You don't have to, because again, this is all about the pineapple. We've got plenty of extracts that are all about the vanilla. But if you want to, we love it. They only get better, right? They only get better.
When they're sitting there, while you're waiting to use them, if the vanilla is in there, you're just going to be adding more vanilla goodness. So I just don't see how you can go wrong there.
Yes.
Okay, so now the important part is you have to make sure that you are labeling your extracts, because I can guarantee that I will not remember what I did and what's the next step. So I always label. I put the date on the bottom that I started. And so I'll add a 522 here at the bottom, and then the name of it. I always like to put the page number of the book, just because then I don't have to go through them okay, quickly, what was that recipe again? And then I always say what my next step is on the jar here, change out in 1 month. So this is going to be ready. I can't wait to start smelling that in a little bit.
It's going to be a fun one. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to tip it on its side just so they can see it here. So they can see how the alcohol and the beans kind of, sit in. So you'll see the vanilla bean sticking a little bit out. And so when we're done here, we're probably going to open that up and we're going to push this vanilla bean down onto the surface. This is an important point. The vanilla can stick out. It's not going to mold. It's not going to go bad. But if it's not under the alcohol, it's not extracting.
Yeah.
So that's the point, is we try to just make sure every part is under so it extracts. It won't mold in there, but it's not extracting either.
Well, and as you're doing this, your fermentation weight is moving around and things are getting around. So if you're going to be moving it around, it's just smart to open it up again, push things down.
Get them all under the surface as best you can.
Yeah.
That one just doesn't want to go.
I know.
We might have to get our scissors out and just cut that one in half.
I know, but that was one of my full ones.
I know. It's a fun. Oh, you're right. We might have to double knot it then.
Double. And hey, that's something you can do. We didn't talk about is if it is still long, because it is a large bean, then you can double knot them to get them to stick down there.
Sometimes they're just like stubborn little guys. We call them our teenage beans. They just never listen to what we say.
So that easy, you guys. 1 ounce of vanilla beans, 1 ounce of freeze-dried pineapple, and 8 ounces of white rum, and you are good to go. You are good to go. So we're going to check back in a month. We're going to do this one in our next show. We'll do a change out. And then in 2 months, we're going to be doing taste testing. We got a whole bunch. Like, did we point this out up front? We actually did not. All of these extracts, I know there's a bunch here today, but these are all the extracts we've made together in our lives since our book came out. We started in November. And so we've done all of these extracts in a live. Maybe you've been with us on all of them. Maybe you haven't. But I mean, look at all these extracts we have going, and there's plenty of them. I think next month, 3 are finished and we get to taste test. Yeah, we start getting into taste test season, which is lots of fun. Yeah. We're going to have to, have lots of sips of extract on the show. Yeah. That could be interesting.